1 minute? I'm having a hard time with this computer. It's got to be me, obviously. I'm not there yet, but I'll probably while you're talking, I'll be close.
Hello and welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, and this is a public hearing followed by a regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Litchfield Elementary School District. I will hereby convene the public hearing regarding instructional time model for the 2022-2023 school year. Our agenda item 1B is presentation of the instructional time model, which will be presented by Executive Director DeCoste.
Hi. I was waiting to see if it's coming up on the screen. Is it not? Does it matter? Okay, you guys all have it. Thank you, President Moran and members of the board, Superintendent Gunning. So last year we came to you asking you to improve the instructional time model, which allows us some flexibility in case of unique circumstances or emergency situations. So we're in a similar place in planning for the unknown for next year. We don't know exactly what COVID's going to look like. Would you like me to wait a second? What COVID will look like, what quarantining will look like, and those types of things. So we'd like to consider continuing an approval of an instructional time model again. So if you remember, it was House Bill 2862 that was passed last April or the April before, and allowing school districts to adopt time models that provide flexibility in how instructional hours are met. And we can do that through different modes of instruction. Our specific mode would be remote. It requires us to receive approval from the governing board member and then the 2 public hearings and opportunity for public comment. So it could be in person or remote. And to offer remote learning in the upcoming school year, we would have to have an approved AOI, which we closed our AOI, so we don't have that opportunity to put students in the Digital Learning Academy. Sorry, I'm fumbling on my words tonight. As long as a student doesn't receive more than 40% of their instruction online, we would still receive 100% of our funding. It allows for staggered times and schedules and permits for a combination of direct instruction, project-based, independent, or mastery learning. Those are not models that we're looking at. I'm just sharing with you some of the different things that other school districts are doing. This would also be the type of model that you would use if you were a 4-day-week school district. So for us, we would be looking at continuing a remote learning instructional time model implemented either at the student level, so it could be individually, at a classroom, school, or a district level during quarantines, isolations, health, safety, and welfare concerns. Remote learning would not be allowed for everyday absences, regular illnesses, doctor's appointments, out of town, vacation, anything like that. It would, President Moran, would you like me to wait? Yes, please. Okay, sure. I think the only thing I have because we did it last year. That's okay. You're the best.
My apologies. Please continue.
Not a problem. The instructional approach would be that teachers would manage the learning and core content areas through Annuity. So we would purchase Annuity again next year at a much lower cost because we would buy fewer licenses. They would advance through their courses and assignments at their own pace by demonstrating proficiency of the standards. And our teachers were able, during quarantining last year, to learn how to assign certain things to them and then also go in and check their work and be able to give grades during the time that students were out on quarantine. So in the time for students, it's that they would engage in the course online during the instructional day or outside school hours, since Annuity would be available all of the time to them. They would continue to receive math, language arts, science, social studies, special education, and ELL support if that's applicable to them. And we would take attendance. They would be still checking in with their teacher during scheduled Google Meets, and that could be once or twice a week. Then the other attendance piece would be Annuity, calculating their minutes and checking that they completed assignments on Annuity. It aligns to our strategic plan because it would allow students who are in, unique circumstances to access curriculum and instruction when they cannot attend in-person learning. And it allows the district to continue to receive 100% funding for the students, as I said, as long as they don't go over the 40% in remote learning. And it also provides options for parents and students. So this would be good for kids because it maximizes the learning opportunities for children when in-person learning is not an option, and again, only due to health and safety concerns. This isn't something, so we look at it, I wouldn't say emergency, but more as like a very unique option for students. They'd be able to stay connected with their teachers and their classmates via Google Classroom. We would downgrade our amount of licenses that we purchase and go down to 750, so that is the cost that it would be to the district. And then again, I've already said the funding piece a couple times. And then just a refresher on Annuity and what Annuity and My Path are. So that's our self-paced program for students to use to supplement the curriculum and provide standards-based education for students in quarantine and isolation. It allows teachers to get in and give access, gives some flexibility. It has rigorous content, has powerful online schools for both inside and outside the classroom. Real-time data and reporting features help the teachers track student engagement and progress to identify students who might be struggling or need extra help. So that's a mix of Annuity and My Path, because Annuity, again, was for the older students and My Path was for the younger students. Same company. It impacts our students, staff, and our families. So we will do, of course, answer your questions tonight, and then a call to the public for comments tonight, and then a second required public hearing in July with a recommendation to adopt it, and then we would submit our plan to the Arizona Department of Education if it's approved by the governing board. So I'm ready for questions, and if you have any specifically about Annuity, I brought the expert along. I have an expert panel over here. So.
I have one question. So as the board and everyone's aware, we are not going to have the DLA next year, Digital Learning Academy. So how does this, or does it, fit in or supplement at all with, historically last year we could offer, let's say there was someone who did have a chronic health issue, we could have offered them DLA potentially as an alternative. Is this really just kind of a backup plan that's taking the place of that, or this is strictly exceptions only? Tell me a little bit more about if you think this will be utilized and what the likelihood is of the utilization of this program.
We're thinking strictly as a backup plan and not as a replacement to DLA. So we would have students who are either in quarantine or in isolation, or towards the end of the year, we did have some students who were really struggling with, the emotional aspects of coming back from COVID, some serious school anxiety. They were few and far between, but where they still wanted that school family connection, so they connected with their teacher and used Edgenuity instead of going into the Digital Learning Academy, which was, you know, a big change and like changing a school. So would still be an option for those type of students at administrator approval.
Okay, thank you. Any other board member questions?
I have one question on the financial impact slide. I note obviously the cost is significantly less because we're not expecting quarantine and all of that kind of stuff. Will be kind of, you said few and far between. Is 750 licenses, is that something that the district decided in terms of the number that we would need? Is that a category within Edgenuity? It just seems like a high number to me. So, you know, for exceptions, that's 6 or 7% of our student population. I can't imagine that we would need that many. So I'm just wondering, is that just because that's the sort of the tier that was available to us, or?
Well, originally we were going with Edgenuity for DLA and then an additional 750 for this purpose. We just wanted to be safe because if we don't know what's going to happen. You know, like COVID's spiking now everywhere, and so when we come back to school, is there a possibility that we would need 750? We're just not really sure where that ball's going to drop. So we kind of, I think, took a conservative approach, but it may not be. And we also did have it being used in the classroom for like support for science teachers and things like that. So those licenses were used.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Same slide. The 750 licenses, they're good for how long?
1 year.
1 year? And the funding source, what is the funding source?
Is it the Governor's Education Plus Up grant? Thank you.
The federal government you're talking about?
Governor, so the
the
state governor,
governor.
Governor Ducey.
Governor Ducey, okay. And to receive 100% funding, you're talking about ADM, right?
Yes.
Now, I've got a question on slide number 5.
I don't see numbers on this. Can you tell me which title?
The remote learning well.
There we go.
There it is, right there. The question I have is, who determines, I mean, who's the final person to determine whether this student is eligible for the remote learning? I'm not clear.
Well, the way that it worked last year, when it was not a quarantine or isolation situation, it would be the principal would call me and we would talk through the situation. We would include special education, and we would also include Digital Learning Academy to see which was going to be the best model for these unique students. When it was quarantine and isolation, the nurse would let the principal know, and the principal would let the registrar know, because there are different things they have to do with attendance.
And there's consistency with the instructor, or no?
With the
Or
instructor,
instructors, will it be the same instructors?
they'll still have their same classroom teacher
Same classroom
that they'll meet
teachers.
up with on Google, but Edgenuity does have like a on-demand tutoring type situation where you can get help.
So the way that we did it last year is we enrolled all the students across the district because it was just very hard to manage in and out, in and out.
Yeah, understood.
We designed courses. For 3-5, we designed them monthly, and for 6-8, we designed them quarterly. And they were designed after what was being taught in the classroom. So students would be enrolled, they'd leave class due to quarantine, and they'd jump into those Edgenuity classes with seamless integration. And so they were able to move quickly through things that maybe they've already seen, but then if it was new material, then that's where a lot of the lessons would happen. And they're self-paced lessons with video instruction, and we also included the on-demand tutor. So if a student ever really got stuck, they had the ability to call in right there, and a tutor would join them in their class.
And the tutor works for your company?
works for Imagine Learning, which is the company.
A contract, okay.
Mhm.
I think that's all I have.
Board Member Saitama, do you have any questions?
No, I think they got them all.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Executive Director DeCoste.
Anything else you'd like to see next presentation, or is this looks okay the way that it is? We'll come back around. Okay.
Looks good to me.
All right, great. Email me if you think of something else for July. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. We will now move to the opportunity for public comment on the instructional time model. Ms. Potapov, do I have a disclaimer that I need to read for this section? No. We do have one person who would like to participate. I believe the comments will be limited to 3 minutes as usual, and that is Mr. Mike Finnegan. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Finnegan. Welcome back, Kim. Hope you're healthy.
Thank you.
At a previous meeting, it was mentioned about Governor Ducey's education grant being in the range of $304,705. At that time, 11,000 licenses were quoted at $28 per student, which brings you back into a $308,000 range. Tonight, Mr. Koss proposes 750 licenses, but the fee per student is now changed from $28 to $53 student. I'm wondering why that is. And these licenses are only good for 1 year, so this is a renewable expense to keep this going. My question is, where does the money come from after this grant is exhausted? Is LESD going to start picking up the tab? But really, my questions are, what's driving this? Is there a district need? Because recently, I saw where you're discontinuing the digital learning program because it's kids are glad to be back in school, and there's not a demand for that program anymore. And yet, here we are developing a Annuity program for students at home. I don't understand it. Is government funding dollars looking for a place to be used or lose it? Is that why Annuity is being proposed? Today's the first hearing on it. Next month, July 12th, is the second hearing, and then you're going to vote to adopt it. It's a pretty quick adoption timeline. I would proposal developments need assessments. We need to know what the goals are of this program, and we need to measure its performance. And for the foreseen timeline, whatever that may be. And then you have to evaluate it. Is it needed or is it useful? What's your return on investment? These questions need to be answered, need to be thought about, need to be asked. That's why I'm here tonight. I hope you put a little more thought into these proposals. Not only Annuity, but any new proposal in this district should be treated in this fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan.
I motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I will second. Having a first and a second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to our regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Litchfield Elementary School District. I hereby call this meeting to order, and we will begin with Agenda Item 2B, Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join me. Please be seated. We will now have a moment of silent reflection. Please join me for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item 4, recognitions and presentations. Agenda item 4A is recognitions and celebrations, which will be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the Governing Board, I am excited tonight to celebrate a very special person. The person that we're going to celebrate is Miss Wendy Qualls. We wanted to make sure that we did not close out her time without recognizing her, because I'm sure in the near future, she may not be at these meetings as much as she typically attends. So in celebrating Wendy, we got to look at her years dedicated to finance and to fiscal responsibility, and that is 35 years that she's been dedicated to this career. She's been with us for 16 years, and her leadership with us has helped us in building multiple campuses, brand new campuses, remodels, handling a recession, ensuring that we were able to stay fiscally responsible during the recession, and having minimal impact to our staff and our district. Jumped right into the pandemic and learning about all of the different components, requirements, grant opportunities, and every time we signed up for a grant, knowing that that was additional work that was coming her way and to her team. Always remaining fiscally responsible, but always with a focus on our children. There was never a moment or a time that I ever asked Wendy for something or had her think about something that she didn't truly put thought into it and came back with, this is what's best for kids, and never second guessed. So with that, I just want to say thank you, Wendy.
I didn't realize, Wendy, that this is, I mean, I say your last meeting, it's not your last meeting, but your last meeting potentially sitting at that table and talking with us maybe. So I didn't realize, but congratulations on a really great career. I know it's not done yet, but at least doing what you have been doing. And you're lucky I didn't get to prepare anything because I didn't know, so this is going to be short. But I just want to say in my 7 years maybe of doing this job, I have relied on your steadfast leadership, your calm demeanor, and your ability to explain complex, financial, sometimes problems, sometimes not, to those of us that, understand business and understand the way things should work, but don't always understand the complex spreadsheets that you want to present to us. So I appreciate everything that you've contributed to this, and I look forward to seeing what the next step brings for you.
I would like to jump on that and just say to Executive Director Qualls that I appreciate that even when I have asked more of you than you have wanted to give, you have always met me at my place of want and need, and even surpassed that. So you've consistently exceeded my expectations, and I feel we've always had a connection because of our shared experience as CPAs from a professional standpoint. And so I appreciate you, and your hard work and dedication to this district has not gone unseen, and is very, very much appreciated. Thank you. Wow, okay. Next on our agenda is item 4B, which is the Educational Technology Integration Plan, AKA our one-to-one device rollout. This is going to be presented by Director Combs.
Good evening, Madam President and board members. It is my pleasure to bring you an update on our one-to-one initiative rollout that you approved back in October. And so I've been working on this throughout the year with many people inputting and lots of help from others as well. As you know, I'm the Director of Educational Technology for our district. The pillars that this aligns to are our student success and finances and resources. As previously stated with the goals for this initiative, these are long-term, not not year one. These next few slides have those, and I won't read those to you because you do have those in front of you. And there's quite a few. But we do hope that with this one-to-one computer initiative, that we see all of these different things in our classroom and for our students, that student-centered learning, and really centered around those big 4 C's, which is the communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Provides us a lot of different models for our students to be able to reach them with self-paced, with individualized and differentiated instruction. It also hopefully will save us some money in printing costs, paper usage, photocopying, and we also know that most of the curriculums that are out there now have a technology embedded piece. So this will help us integrate those adopted curriculums as well. Year one, this will not be a take-home device initiative. We may look at that further down the road, but not this first year for sure. So the updates I have for you tonight are year one implementation goals, and then the 4 areas that we looked at that we would need updates to, which are personnel, training and support devices and tools, and infrastructure. So year one, we have 4 goals that we will be looking at to have as an outcome for teachers and students at the end of the year. Goal 1 is teachers and students will integrate and utilize the technology features in our current adopted curriculum. So we have our ELA and our math curriculum, the new math curriculum that was just adopted, K-8. We really want to focus on what we already have and getting our teachers and students really using the technology integrated well with the adopted curriculums. Year 2, using that SAMR model, which is a technology integration model. It stands for substitution, augmentation, moderation, and refinement. And each one is a different level of integration. Substitution is exactly what it sounds like. It would be, instead of writing my essay, I type it on a word processor. So we would like to see by the end of the year that we're into kind of that level 2 augmentation, which is instead of me writing the essay, I type it on a Google Doc, but then I share it with others and they comment. So we use a comment feature, we're highlighting, we're using it to collaborate. So you're adding features to it, so we're changing the way the outcome is for students. So that's what that level 2 is. Goal 3 is to increase student active use of technology versus consumption. And active means that as a user of technology, I'm using it to create and to collaborate and communicate outside just my small world even, but globally. Consumption is I'm just using it to watch some YouTube videos and TikTok, and I'm consuming. And right now, a lot of our students use it for consumption, and we want them actively using it. And then the 4th goal is from our educational technology standards. All of these really meet our standards, but this one is specific to Standard 2, which is digital citizenship. So we have 4 bullets that we're going to be looking at, and it's having students recognize the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of living, learning, and working in an interconnected digital world, and that they act and model in ways that are safe, legal, and ethical. And we have 4 ways that they'll be able to demonstrate that. Throughout the year, we'll be collecting data using our educational technology site leads, myself, and our new educational instructional coach, which I'm super excited about. So we will be collecting data and we will report out that data to our stakeholders as well. On the right side is where our updates are. the left side is what we currently had. So our updates are that we have posted for an additional Tech 2 in technology. We've posted in June for a computer and hardware technician, and the project manager for technology, the technology department, was approved and posted in June. We hired a STEAM coach or STEM coach. We hired Phyllis Lazier. She actually was already in our district and moved over into this role. We brought forward stipends for the ed tech site leads if they were not going to use it as their teacher leader project. And currently we have 6 site leads that have indicated that they will elect for the stipend versus the TLP. There are 4 sites that are currently vacant at this point. As far as the training and support, formal skill-based training, the technology department is utilizing their vendors that we purchase equipment from to be part of that. And as far as stipends for our Google certification pathway, we brought that forward for approval in May. So we will be moving forward with that. Additional training for our communication plan for parents and students. We've included it, new device expectations and information in our 22-23 handbook. And we have created a learning training path for our new teacher induction as well. And we, later on in the slide, you'll see the training path that's already been developed for our staff as well. We also, pending grant funding, we will be doing stipends for PD attendance outside of the regular school day as well. As far as devices and tools, we are currently at 11,609 Chromebooks. We have, and they're almost, many of them are brand new. We have also purchased a student device security management or classroom management piece where teachers will be able to see all the screens of their students throughout their classroom and be able to message them, shut tabs, redirect them. We did a pilot and we selected LineWise, which came to the board in May. We have received board approval for purchasing, and the PO has been issued, and the initial training for our site leads has been set for August. Additional charging stations and carts have been purchased, and I believe that technology is working on that 5-year device replenishment plan. As far as our infrastructure, we are currently in the process of getting our student information system, or Synergy, or EduPoint, there's lots of names for it, to sync nightly with our Google account, so we actually reduce some of the workload on both our student information side and also our technology side as well. And we have put in to upgrade our firewall, and we're waiting approval with E-Rate. Devices will be distributed. We actually were able to move up this timeline, and we're allowing our sites to kind of make it site-based depending on their needs. So 6th through 8th grade will definitely be in August. 3rd through 5th grade can be anywhere between August and October. The devices will be available for them. It is a site decision when they want to deploy them. And then for K2, also the same thing. The devices are ready, but we're even giving them a little bit longer into January, especially for our kindergartners. New kindergartners will continue to have devices deployed in January in continuing years. It's just, they need a good half year just to get ready for school and in school and all the different procedures and things that they are already doing. As far as training and support for the first year, I created these 8 different training modules that have been deployed to all staff. They are on demand. They were released in May, but they are not due until August. We did not expect them to do it in May, but we know that we have some go-getters that wanted to have it done and even do some over the summer, but it is not required until the end of August that it is completed. But it does need to be completed before they receive their devices for deployment. And you can see the different trainings that they received. A lot of these have student trainings also built into it, so what the teachers have, they have the resources then to give to students as well. And again, these are just some additional things that we've done. We're working on that 5-year replenishment plan. We created site-based plans for daily pickup, drop-off, recording, and tracking. And we, technology decided that they'd like to continue with the current system for device repair and help desk. Site administration, what's expected on each site was developed with a group of principals to kind of hash out what that would look like. And we are hoping to purchase or upgrade our Destiny Follett library system to use the resource manager, which would allow our teachers to check out devices to students very easily. Just scan with their phone to an app, and then we know exactly where the device is, who it's attached to. If they transfer schools, we know that that device did not follow them unless it did. And actually, Resource Manager has quite a few other functions for our entire district that we would be able to use. We're in the process of syncing again, I said that, and we're maintaining our infrastructure. And at this point, I will take questions about the update.
I have one question for you, just in that last slide, the year 1 implementation plan. First, let me start by saying thank you. This is fantastic. I mean, this is one of the projects that I know the board has been talking about, discussing, wanting for a couple of years, and I think the last maybe 18 months when we realized this was actually going to be a reality, the excitement has just, bubbled over. So seeing the plan, seeing what success looked like and how we're going to, basically hold ourselves accountable to that is really great, and I'm excited to, for our students this next year to really get to be a part of that. My one question for you is, the first thing here is the 5-year refreshment plan. Because so many of our computers are brand new, when do you anticipate we would need to start that sort of refreshment cycle? You may not know that, but just sort of ballpark. The reason I ask that is because there's a large price tag associated with that every year, and so we need to obviously be planning for that, which financially we are, but because you mentioned that a good portion of our system, or devices were brand new. So
we do have budgeted in a certain amount each year for those replenishment. I'm trying to find the slide where we had that. I think it was $1 million each.
I'm just
year.
wondering at what point will we need to do that in year 1 because
Gina,
we
do
have
you
so many
have
new
a-
devices. Wendy, do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. The devices are good for anywhere between 5 to 8 years, depending on the brand. So we do anticipate we will start to see some turnover in the next year, maybe the following year. I don't think it will be as many as
A complete turnover year. I
Right.
understand what you're saying. No. Okay.
Generally, consistency for budget purposes, we would allocate $1 million every year, whether we end up, spending all of that or not. But knowing that that's coming down the pike, that would just be kind of the norm from a budgeting standpoint.
Absolutely. But if we didn't have to do that until year 2 or something, it would seem to make more sense if we have the majority. But it seems like we don't. It seems like we will have to have some costs in the first year that I just wasn't anticipating. But makes
And
sense.
there's some really exciting things happening at the state as well. They have put together kind of right now it's just an interest to see who wants to be part of it, but they're going to put together basically a state contract for the time you purchase devices to the time that they are no longer in need, so even recycling. So all the little pieces in between, they would actually handle a lot of that at a much lower cost to us.
That's great. Thank you. Any other board member questions? Excellent. Thank you, Director Combs, for the update. We are very excited to see the positive impact that this is going to have on our students and our staff in the fall.
Myself as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Next item on the agenda is our community opportunity for comment. Bear with me, please. Okay, I will read the disclaimer regarding public comment. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board. Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and no more than 30 minutes will be devoted to the public comment portion of the agenda. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. I would like to welcome our only public comment tonight from Mr. Mike Finnegan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Finnegan. Congratulations, Mrs. Qualls. By the way, you have all the qualifications for the finance general position. But anyway, wish you well in your new endeavors. I'm going to visit the superintendent goals that the board hashed out recently. The LESD strategic goals are fluff for the superintendent's goals. For example, student success, nurture positive relationships, ensure district-centered student focus, maintain high employee retention rate, recruit and develop, communicate academic performance, offer quality programs. These are not goals, they are fluff. The definition of SMART goal setting is goals are specific. They're measurable, they're attainable, and they're relevant, and they're timely. The superintendent sets the tone, culture, and expectations for the school district. Our purpose is academic achievement, and every meeting needs to begin with the mantra as a reminder. You need to replace useless qualitative wording like nurture, maintain, ensure, and develop with the recently mentioned measurable SMART goals. For all goals, please establish baseline measurements for all new programs. For example, the iReady Math program. What's the baseline that you're going to compare it with Engage New York Math, which it replaced? You spent $1.5 million on this. You better have a baseline for it to compare to see if it was worth changing over to in the first place. 2-year, $7 million ESSER math targeting. You need to hold the ESSER team accountable for measurable results at regular intervals. There's a staffing shortage, a $1 million in vacant staff positions. The superintendent needs to quantify it and reduce it by X% as a measurable goal. These goals are quantitative, not qualitative and nebulous. I'd like to quickly switch over to the education technology integration. My comment is, for the millions of dollars you're spending, will it reduce educational gaps in academic achievement? Will it increase proficiency scores by 21 percentile points as stated in Bin Bin Zhang's article used to justify this expenditure? Measure this with baseline data, quantify its impact and your return on investment.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. Next on our agenda is item 6, which is the consent agenda. Do we have any items that board members would like to pull from the consent agenda?
I don't have any items that I'd like to pull from the consent agenda, but I do have one that I wanted to discuss. So if anyone else has anything to pull, I'll wait, and then I'll wait for the discussion.
I have a discussion on 2 items.
Okay. Board members, Idema, would you like to remove anything from the consent agenda?
No, I do not.
I also do not have anything to remove. Board member Clymer, feel free to ask your clarifying question.
I don't have a clarifying question necessarily. I just wanted to bring to the attention the, let's see, I believe it is item NN, which was just additional costs and change order for the white tanks project. I just sort of wanted to call to the community and the public's attention that, unfortunately, the school district is not immune to challenges and problems that are going on with supply chain and labor shortages and things. There were a few change orders that needed to be replaced. There was, even $100,000 in there somewhere just for, delay of the project based on everything that has happened over the last probably 12, 18 months. So, unfortunately, we're increasing costs on this project, which is, I believe, increasingly needed here in this district and definitely deserves to be built. But this is unfortunately money that we have to spend, and just wanted to draw attention to it since it is such a large amount and we're doing it on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Board Member Clymer. Board Member Dowling?
Yes, on item 7D, please refresh my memory. Looking at fund numbers 227 and 228, ARP ideas. One's a preschool, one's a basic grant. The beginning balance in the current balance is 100%. We haven't spent any money.
So those are high-cost grants, so we're working on our journal entries this month to move some of those expenditures.
You're working on it this month? You haven't used anything this year?
We've used it, we just need to move the money, so it's expenditures we previously had, and then Director McComb submitted for some reimbursements, and so we've received those reimbursements, and so we'll make entries.
If we don't use it all, does it carry over?
Yes.
And I assume the AZ on-track summer camp, we just haven't expended the money yet because it's ongoing right now, correct?
Correct. So payroll will start to hit next week when we process payroll.
Okay. And also, I have a question on 7N. There's a job revision. Is it the same pay, or did the M&O, what, is it more or less?
It's the same pay, it's just updating the job description.
Okay. And that's all I have.
Board Member Idema, do you have any questions on anything contained in the consent agenda?
I have no questions.
Excellent. Then I will move to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to agenda item 8A, which is the Career Development and Performance Compensation Plan for 2022-2023. This will be presented by Executive Director DeCoste.
Thank you. I included a memo to go with, to give you an update on some of the changes. So we have initiated a tiered portion for the professional contributions, which we're asking you to approve for that to be split into 2 tiers. If teachers reach their 30 hours, they'll get the $2,500, which would be half of the $5,000 that's available. Or if they reach 20 hours, then they would receive a reduced amount. So, and then as far as the entire plan goes, there were not a lot of major changes to dates, changes to what you see in there, and then also some of the tables that we had in the back that we're using student growth for, because of our change to illumination and our change in the benchmark data that we'll be collecting, because that assessment will change a little bit. We deleted that for this year, and I think I included a statement in there explaining it.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that part?
So if you're looking at, there's a huge section towards the end that we deleted. We took it out. Let me scroll down to it. Give me just 1 second. I'll tell you what page.
I think it's like 23 through 26.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Clymer. Yes, it is. So the performance categories are to be determined pending analysis of the new assessment and data platform. And so as you'll see that we're keeping the assessments, we're still doing our district benchmark assessments through Illuminate, and we will figure out how to analyze those. And by we, I mean Mr. Owen, our Director of Assessment and Accountability. So he'll be doing that, and we'll be updating our performance benchmarks as an addendum to the guide when we get there, which will be maybe, I'm not sure exactly the time frame on that, to tell you the truth, since it's a new adventure for us. So that's why you see all of those deleted out, all the way to page 26.
Anything else you'd like to highlight, Executive Director DeCoste?
No, but I congratulate you for reading through the document and asking questions.
I would like to start the commentary by saying I'm very pleased to see a tiered approach for 2 reasons. Number one, I think tiering the performance compensation is what I would like to see more of in the future. I know in this case we are tiering it really down so that we can help with teacher burnout, which is the second piece that I'm happy to see that we have been able to take action on to allow that flexibility. If teachers elect to do more hours, they will get compensated accordingly. If they don't, because they need to maintain their self-care or family time, then they have the option of doing that and still receiving some compensation. Do any other board members have questions or comments?
I have one question and one comment. I think the question is would be the same, but I just wanted to make sure. So the 20 hours in the tiered section, does the same rules apply, meaning the 20 hours can come 100% from professional development and 0 hours from the community involvement, I think, or it can be a combination of the 2? Is that correct? But it just can't be...
It's 15 hours of professional development still required, so it would only be 5 additional hours of community contributions.
Can they do all 20 hours in professional development?
Yes, and they can
Okay.
do all 30 hours in professional development,
Right,
too.
that's what I'm saying. So it's still in alignment with the 30. They can do all of it or a combination of the 2, but they still have that choice in the tiered approach. Okay, perfect. Also, I would just like to, this is more a comment for the board. I know we have discussed in the recent past a desire to review the teacher evaluations, teacher contracts, that, there's several things that we have on our docket for this school year and to employ in the next school year. And I think this should be closely tied to that, only because in the student growth component, some of that comes from the evaluation and the metrics and the analysis that comes from that. So I think I'd like to just direct our attention to adding that to the list to make sure that we, go through this or possibly streamline that in accordance to the evaluation instrument once we get there this school year.
Okay, so what I believe I'm hearing you say is we already have an existing board request to revisit teacher contracts. In conjunction with that, we would like to revisit the performance compensation plan for future school years, depending on the outcome of that and the evaluations as well. So kind of marrying those things together to make sure that they're all in alignment.
Correct.
Okay. I'm not sure, Superintendent Gunning, what you think the best timing for that would be, as far as starting with the study session and maybe gaining some more insight into, we know contracts have to be out the door in March of next year, so we need to back, I guess, up into that, knowing from the evaluation standpoint, again, nothing being implemented in the 2022-23 school year, it would be for school years after that.
Yeah, I think what we should do is sit down and look at our timeline that we have kind of mapped out on the topics to see if we've provided ample time and give in that time. Because we have some of them already mapped out through, next year. So
Okay.
I know this is the teacher evaluation and contracts on there. So let's just double check and then we can add this. Just make sure all three pieces are always there at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, great. If we can get that added to that scorecard, that would be appreciated. Dr. Dowling or Board Member Zeidema, do you have any comments or questions?
No comment.
All right, then, hearing no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve the career development and performance compensation plan for 22-23 school year as presented.
I will second.
Having a first and second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is item 8B, approval of the 2022-2023 Performance Award Plan. This will be presented by Director Reichs. Is that right? Okay, yay. Director Reichs, welcome.
Perfect pronouncement, President Moran. Thank you. All right. Madam President, members of the Governing Board, and Superintendent Gunning, this evening we present the annual 2022-2023 Performance Award Plan for your approval. All amounts shown in the Performance Award Plan were previously approved by the Governing Board on April 12, 2022. The Performance Award Plan is referenced in all eligible employment contracts and will allow the district to pay performance awards in the same fiscal year the employee's performance is evaluated. One of the new changes we did make this year was to add an evaluation completion date for all administrators by May 31, 2023. All other changes are made using strike-through and underline, and we also summarize those changes for you on the board summary. At this time, I can assist with any questions.
Do any board members have questions or comments?
No questions necessarily. Just happy to see that we've been able to increase the amounts over time. I think that's not necessarily something that we did, but something that fell into our lap. So we will take it and pass that along to people that deserve it.
All right, then I will move to approve the 2022-2023 Performance Award Plan as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Reichs.
I believe the next several are me.
Yes, stick around. So next up on our agenda is item 8C, which is the approval of the new position and job description for the finance generalist. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning, this evening we present a new position for a finance generalist serving at the district office for your approval. We have provided you with the job description and placement chart. The funding for this position was previously approved by the board on April 12, 2022. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question regarding this position. My understanding, based on going through all of the agenda, is that current Executive Director Qualls will be appointed to fill this position. My question is related to the long term. So I know historically we've run very lean in this area, and I just want to make sure that I have a correct understanding that this position is something that is needed to go for the long term, even beyond Executive Director Qualls' timeframe for retirement.
Yes, that is my understanding and the intention of the position.
Any additional commentary on that, Superintendent Gunning?
I was just going to add that, yes, so if at any point in time that Ms. Qualls decides to leave, the position would post and we would fill it.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions on this job posting position? Then I will move to approve the new position and job description for the finance generalist as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is item 8D, classified personnel employment position change with new employment agreement, which will also be presented by Director Reichs.
Madam President, members of the Governing Board, and Superintendent Gunning, this evening we present the classified new hires report for your approval. This report was moved to an action item because it includes the newly added finance generalist position we just discussed, so thank you, and our request for the board to appoint Wendy Qualls to this position beginning July 1, 2022. The rest of the report is standard. Are there any questions for me?
I don't have any questions in regards to the finance position. Thank you for answering the questions from before. I would like to say that it looks like we have a new director of purchasing coming on. Mr. Spivey has been a great asset to this district for a number of years, so I don't see him here today, but looking forward to working with Ms. Gomez, but really appreciate the work that he's put into the district so far. So.
I would just like to add that this board does not take appointments lightly. It's not something that we are in the practice of doing. However, we realize that Executive Director Qualls is more than qualified for this position, and so we look forward to welcoming her to stay on board as long as she is willing and able. Any other questions or comments on this item? No?
I will make a motion to approve the classified personnel employment position change with new employment agreement as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have agenda item 8E, additional stipend requests recommended for approval. This will also be presented by Director Reichs.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the Governing Board and Superintendent Gunning, this evening we present additional stipend requests for approval. This document includes several stipend requests needed for various departments. Two of the stipends are needed to allow the new Executive Director of Finance, and the new Director of Purchasing to start work prior to their July 1, 22 contract start dates. This will help ensure a smooth transition. I can answer any questions you may have.
I just have one comment or question. Ms. Reichs, I know this is probably, I think this is your very first meeting. I know you've been with us before, but your first meeting up here. So I will tell you that stipends are like the ring of fire up here for the board. So we always have lots of questions, and just to put it out there and be honest. So we always have a lot of questions, so just bear with us. One of my questions with the specific request for the as needed only, I understand, when you have sort of a switchover of staff members for, I think you mentioned the Director of Finance and Purchasing, makes perfect sense to me. But in the as needed basis with Human Resources and Community Relations, can you explain to me a little bit what would deem a need there? How does that, how would you?
I'm going
Or I'll ask Jody.
Is that okay?
Superintendent Gunning.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So what we realized, and a perfect example is in human resources, there are a lot of things that happen on an annual basis that are not a regular basis. So we want to be able to have that flexibility. So perfect example are teacher contracts. They happen one time a year, that we could call on the expertise of Director Sanders to come back and to provide training in that moment and during that time. Same thing as if there was something in relation to community relations that came up that was something at a certain time of the year or a specific need, that we would have that flexibility to bring her in.
Really? I'm the only question with stipends?
I was just going to add commentary that we don't take appointments lightly, and we also don't take stipends lightly. So
We're making progress, though, clearly. We only had one question for the evening, so we're moving in the right direction.
yeah, I mean, I agree that I think these, the specificity of these particular stipends are a smart move. If we need them, we will call on them. If we don't, we won't. But we do have some clear expertise that has technically exited the district. So I think it would be great if we'd have the flexibility to be able to call on them.
I'd just add that I feel like these situations are exactly what stipends should be for. So while we do have a problem with them at times because we feel like they're overused, these situations are a perfect example of why you might want to have them. So.
Agreed. I will make a motion that we approve the additional stipend requests as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the approval of the 2022-2023 Employee Handbook, also presented by Director Reichs.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, and Superintendent Gunning. This evening, we present the 2022-2023 Employee Handbook for your approval. This is an annual document that requires approval each year. The board's summary outlines minor and routine updates we made this year and that we make on a routine basis every year. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a comment to make on concerning page 21.
Okay.
There appears to be a typo, work calendar A. Do you see that? Work calendar A. Yes or no?
That is a great question. I would have to take a look at that. Can you be more specific,
Yes,
Dr. Dow?
work calendar A, one level reduction if 21 hours of professional development is not by May 21st. If not, what? Completed, done?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if I understand correctly, Dr. Dowling, you're saying it's missing a word to add clarity.
There you go. Both calendar, A and K. And I make a recommendation that you, I went through it, and there may be, just make sure there's no other missing words, typo, I don't know.
We can do that.
That's all I have.
Do they have the ability to do housekeeping type things like that? Or no? Like, do we need to make a motion to allow them to do that so we don't have to bring it back to add the words, or?
Was this an action item? It
Yes.
is.
Yes.
I don't know.
We could just approve with that exception. Instead of as presented, we would say with the addition of the word completed as discussed. But before we entertain a motion, I would like to add another item to our to-do lists as a board. I think there are 3, and there could be more, areas of the employee handbook that will need to be revisited in the 2022-2023 school year for update in the following school year. The first would be the evaluation section. Obviously, if we're updating teacher evaluations, we need to update this. The second potential item area would be medical insurance. As a board, we know we're on the cusp of potentially pushing some of the medical premiums onto our employees. That would require an update to this as well. And I think the dress code is worth revisiting. We updated that for our students this year. Having reviewed what's in the employee handbook, we have some pretty dated language in there as well, and I think that would make sense for us to look at that as well in the coming school year, again, for recommendation to be adopted in the 2023-2024 school year.
I have one other comment before we move to a motion. On page 47, the top paragraph, 3 lines down, it starts in the middle of that line. It's in reference to the dress code. It says administrators may develop more restrictive guidelines for their campus, but they may not create less restrictive guidelines. I'm not comfortable with campus administrators being able to modify the employee handbook at will without some, I realize this is the dress code, but just to make it consistent across campuses. So I'd like to see that, just that line there taken out. I think that this is a district-wide, and this is a policy or a recommendation that we do as a district, and I don't think that it's right to have different campuses following different rules.
Dr. Dowling or Board Member Zeidema, do you have any comments on that?
I would agree that I don't think that different campuses should have different rules. One of the things we talk about is wanting consistency across our district, so I think that this is another example of how we're not doing that, so.
No, I would agree with Danielle.
Director Reichs, is there any comment? I mean, is there any other things that we should be considering when it comes to that statement? Or Superintendent Gunning, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know you haven't been here very long. Just wondering, is there something else we need to consider before making that change?
No, I think we could make that change. I believe that line was probably put in years ago when we adopted our self-contained programs, so that they might have a very specific criteria based on the setting for safety purposes. So I think that was probably where it came from, but we could remove it.
Okay. I think that also might be covered. The next line says directors may develop alternative guidelines for their department. I'm assuming that's facilities or maybe even special ed. There may be some other things. So I think that probably would still be covered because I think that's a good example of that. So thank you. That was my only comment.
Okay. Board Member Zeidema, do you have any comments? Okay, I think that's good feedback. Thank you. I would like to move to approve the 2022-2023 Employee Handbook with the 2 revisions as specified, correcting the wording on the work calendars and striking the sentence regarding campus guidelines for dress code. Okay, I will second that. Having a first and a second, I will take the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Reichs, for all of your presentations tonight. Next up, we have Agenda Item 8G, which is approval of open enrollment school capacity and grade level availability, which will be presented by Executive Director Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Gunning. So tonight I have for you an updated grid to post on our website that shows where there is availability for open enrollment. So this was updated based on the applications that had been approved through last week. And this would be up there for 12 weeks. It could be longer if there isn't any material changes.
Do any board members have questions or comments on this item? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I will move to approve the open enrollment availability for the 22-23 school year as presented.
I will second. Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is item 8H, recommendation to approve the pro statement for the maintenance and operation budget override election to be held on November 8th, 2022. I will present this item. Board members, you should have in front of you on your board docs the proposed board statement for override continuation draft. I had asked a question about adding a comment regarding the fact that when we increased the override from 10% to 15%, we allocated the entire additional 5% to go exclusively to teacher salaries. However, I've been informed there is a 200-word limit, and we are at 198 words. So we don't have room for that.
Can I make a suggestion before you
Yes.
go on to that? I think I saw that in the notes. I think adding the 30 years, obviously we need to correct that sentence. So that makes sense to me under this is not a tax increase. I would suggest that, that extra 5% is very important to several members of our staff, and I think is a point of pride for the board that we've been able to maintain that. So I would suggest in that last paragraph that we would take out the fact that the West Valley View honored us as a best school district. While I'm proud of that accolade, I think probably highlighting our efforts at increasing teacher pay is probably more important than that. So my suggestion would be to take out that sentence and replace it with one above that is explaining what you just mentioned in terms of the difference in the 5%.
Okay, I believe this is not due until August 12th. So we do have some time to be able to wordsmith this, is that correct? Yes, okay. Or do you want us to hash out the exact wording right now, is what I'm asking. Okay. Let me work on a draft, or if someone on your staff, Jody, would like to work on who's better at grammar maybe than me.
Is the board in agreement? I mean, if we need to, basically we need to cut one sentence is what I'm understanding. If we want to, number one, let's just have some consensus. Do we agree that we need to add that in? And then is that sentence a good one to cut? And then I'm assuming we can just have, someone come up and it can only be 8 or 9 words because it's just the one sentence, right? I mean, that's all we can really add because we're at the maximum capacity right now.
I agree with that, with cutting the West Valley View sentence in and replacing that with the emphasis of the 5% going exclusively to teacher salaries. Board Member Zaidama?
Yes, I would agree with that, swapping those sentences.
Dr. Dowling?
I would make one more suggestion in the second paragraph. As governing board members, we understand excellent schools play an important role. I would replace protecting with enhancing property values. It's recommendation. And then I have a question. When was this written? About 30 years ago? Was this something that was written recently?
Yeah?
Was it the one that, did we use this in the last override?
Yes, we used that or similar to it.
I'm superstitious. When I was coaching, I was on a win streak, I didn't wash my shirt. But when I lost, I took it and I burned it. So I'd recommend that we possibly revise this whole statement. Or somebody rewrite it to where it's up to date. We can mention that it's $15 an hour for our support staff due to this override, things of that nature, and highlight those aspects. And understand there is a 200-word limit. But I don't know, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say in clarification to that is we can only put in this statement the things that the override portion of the M&O specifically funds. So I don't know that the $15 an hour is a specific funding from that. So even though that's a great thing that we're doing, I don't think we can put that in this statement.
Can we or not? Wendy?
That one I would share with our attorney and ask them to review it. I think it would depend how it's worded, because if you weren't really saying it's paid from the override, but it allows for that, but that would be a question for the attorney.
I mean, I know that the 3 bullet points that are included in here are the bullet points that came from the polling that we had done and what the priorities are in the community. So that's one of the primary reasons that we utilize those 3 particular bullet points. Do we want to bring this to the study session on June 28th? I believe it's June 28th, to get additional feedback. Like I said, we do have time before this statement would actually be due. We could revisit it then, and then we could all think about it, come back with commentary, and then have time to approve it in the July meeting.
Sure, that sounds great.
I think it's a good idea.
One of these days I'm going to remember how to do this, but do we just then do no motion at all, or do we motion to table? No motion. Okay, thank you, Amy. Then we will move on to agenda item 9A, first reading and discussion of revisions to Governing Board Policy GCCA, Professional Staff General Leave, and GDCA, Support Staff General Leave, presented by Executive Director Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning. So in November of 2006, the voters approved Proposition 206, which required not only the minimum wage, but also paid sick leave for all employees. So throughout COVID, in the last couple of years, employees have had discussions about the balances and the amounts that are in the sick leave amounts. So the proposition allows for employers to accrue up to 40 hours per year. So the member or the employee could accrue up to 40 hours a year and use up to 40 hours. So we allow them to do that currently. What the employees have asked for through the different groups, the Superintendent's Advisory Council and the Finance Committee, is to allow employees to use more than 40 hours. If they have it earned and it's in their sick leave plan, they would like to be able to use more than just the 40 hours. The other component is currently that could build to 80 hours, and then anything over 80 when they return the following year would either be paid out to them if they don't have a leave plan, or it would be rolled into their personal leave. So by the end of that year, if you rolled forward 80 hours, you have 120 hours built up in sick leave. So another thing that was brought up is, why can't we roll at a lower balance rather than going up to 80 hours? Can we roll it at 40 hours either into their leave plan or pay it out? So with that, I estimate that the minimum wage that we'd be paying out for this next year would be an additional 4,990 hours if all the employees return that would be being paid out. It's about $62,000. Sorry, 82,000.
82.
And then for those where the hours would roll into their leave plan, it's an additional 23,000 hours, about $226,000. But that would be paid out as employees left. It wouldn't be all a one-year expense. And again, it's a one-time addition, because if we approve to decrease it to the 40 hours, it's that extra 40 hours that would be paid out next year. And so going forward, we'd be back to where we are. So it's kind of just a one-year spike for us if we move forward with this.
Can you tell me more about the pros of this policy change?
So the pros would be that if someone was ill and they don't qualify for family medical leave, they still would have possibly up to 80 hours that they would be able to use through the school year if they were to get seriously ill or injured. Also that...
Wait, just 1 second. And do they not have that now? I mean, I thought we had up to 80 hours.
So currently, they can only use up to 40. So even though you carry forward 80 and it builds to 120 by the end of this year, you could have only used 40.
Okay.
And so that's why the first item is to allow them to use whatever is in the plan. And then the second item is not to roll it sooner, to roll it out of that. And I think that's just that you have that time, it's not paid out when you leave. And they just feel like that's a lot of hours being tied up in a sick plan. So the request is to change that to personal leave or buy it out.
Okay, so I know you've said this, but let me just clarify. So the second piece, which is the moving the sick time into personal time, currently, if someone leaves, are they paid out for both sick time and personal time?
No, sick leave is not paid out, only personal leave.
Okay, so in essence, we are going to be paying people more when they leave our district.
Yes, if they don't use it. So they're either going to have more days to use, or they would get paid out when they leave. And if you go back to when we first established this, we reduced the number of days in personal leave and put it into sick leave. So it's kind of just like building back up that personal leave.
And I hear you saying that this is a one-time, but explain to me will people continually be banking sick time and moving it to personal time, or that is strictly a one-time thing?
So it would continue, because let's start with your first year. You come in, you could earn up to 40 hours. Your second year, at the end of the year, if you didn't use it, you'd be up to 80. And so if this was adopted, 40 hours of that would go into either their personal leave if they returned, or it would be paid out at minimum. And they would start with 40 hours again, and they're going to earn 40 hours again during the next year. And then if they don't use it, 40 hours of it would go to their personal leave plan. So the difference would be the way the policy has been, the person would have gotten up to 180 hours at the end of this year. They come back, it would be 40 hours that would be moved. If we implement this, it's 80 hours that's moved. And then from there forward, it goes to 40 hours. So it's the 1 year spike that would be up to the 80 hours.
But when you said before, I'm sorry, Kim, I just had a question about that. When you said before, this one of the pros was that they could utilize their sick time. Do you mean utilize their sick time as personal time? Because if they have the sick time, they should be able to use that as sick time. So I guess my concern is that we're just funneling sick pay into regular, into personal pay. personal time off or whatever, and then when they leave, we're just spending more money when they leave. So, I mean, I understand, I want people to be able to use the time that they have when they work here. I'm not sure that I'm in favor of giving them more opportunity to get paid out when they leave here. I'm less interested in that.
Well, I agree. I think it is not in line with one of the things that we want to see, which is why we removed the attendance portion from the performance pay, which is we want people to take their time off. If you're sick, we want you to stay home. So while I do agree with the first policy change, which is allowing them to dip into their accrued sick leave if they have more than 40 hours in one particular year, especially since this pandemic is not over, I don't know that I agree with the second policy, which is taking sick time and putting it into personal time and basically paying people out for that, when currently we don't allow that as sick time. I would appreciate any additional board member feedback.
I need some clarification. The financial impact will be a minimum of $226,473. Is that's one time? That's the impact for one, just getting this the way the changes are presented?
It's one time, but it wouldn't all be paid out in the same year. So it's taking those additional hours, whether it's 40 hours because the person's at 80, or it's another 20 because they're at 60. It's whatever that additional amount is, and then it may not get paid out if they aren't here more than 5 years. And if it is paid out, it's paid out at half the sub rate once they reach 5 years. And then once they've reached 10 years, it would go up to the sub rate. And then 15 years, it would be at the long-term sub rate.
Okay, what do you do with let's say, a first or second year teacher, and they haven't earned anything? Do you give them some leave time or discretionary time or sick time up front?
So the sick time is accrued based on the hours they're working, so that is not upfront. But their personal leave, there is a policy that allows the superintendent to front them days.
On a case-by-case?
On personal, on a case-by-case.
Okay. Do we have in this district some districts have what's called discretionary time? That it can use sick or vacation?
No, so it's paid sick leave by statute, since it was a proposition. It is written into statute, and it's only for very specific items. And we do monitor that and only approve it if it is for approved sick leave purposes. Vacational and personal time, they can take. That's not restricted to purpose or anything.
But the suggestion here would be that over 40 hours, once they reach 40 hours, instead of 80, they can roll that sick time over to personal time.
Yes.
So
And it's
it
not
is, in
that,
essence, would be personal time once they reach that 40-hour mark versus the 80-hour mark, like it is now.
correct. And it wouldn't be their choice. It would happen for everyone consistently. So you wouldn't have the choice of saying, I want to roll mine, I don't want to roll mine. It would be consistent either at 40 hours or 80 hours.
Sure, but I mean, would there be a negative impact for them not to roll it over? I mean, if they have personal time, they can take that for personal or sick or whatever. Sick is only sick, and so I don't think there would be a positive for them not to roll it over, would there? I mean, they'd have more choices if they roll
Right.
it over to personal time. Okay.
My concern is that the financial impact is a minimum of $226,000. Over the years, it will become more and more. So the first policy is a one-time, but the second policy really isn't a one-time. It's a one-time based on what we know today, but it's a continuation that we're going to be continually allowing the conversion of sick time, and really that's discouraging you to take your sick time. If you can roll your sick time into personal time and eventually get paid for that, that discourages people to stay home when they are sick. in my opinion. This is a first reading and discussion of this. We can provide some feedback, which we are providing now, obviously, on changes we would want to see, or if we are in favor of proceeding with the second reading on one or both of these policies.
Wendy, can you give me a little background of how this came to be? Or, I mean, I know we have some of these policies in place, but the change in policy, where did that come from?
The original change?
Or just
Or
the change that you're
this change?
requesting today?
So this change came from discussions at the superintendent's advisory meetings and also from the finance committee.
Okay. And is that because, is there, you know, from the finance perspective, is that because other districts are doing it that way? Is that a retention effort for teachers and classified staff? Is that what is your reasoning behind wanting this to change? I understand the superintendent's advisory because they're directly affected by this primarily, but what is the finance reason for this?
So you have some, not the same staff, but you still have other district employees on the finance, so it's not really finance people. It's a splattering
I
of
misunderstood.
teachers and aides in different positions. And it was more, I think the primary was to be able to use the amount that's in there. So to know that you have 80 hours or 120 hours, and you can only get paid for 40, but you were sick for 2 weeks, and you didn't qualify for family leave, but yet you had all the sick leave banked up, they wanted to be able to be paid for that. And what,
Okay, wait, say that one, go back through that example again. So if you have 40 hours of time and you were sick, why would you not be paid for those weeks?
because in our current policy and from the original proposition, it was employees could take up to 40 hours of paid sick leave.
Okay.
So that was one of the original verbiage that came out of the proposition. And so we had that in our policy that you could only use up to 40 hours.
This is the first part of this piece, that we're moving it to the 80 hours, is what you're describing here. Moving the 40 to the 80 hours. This is part one of the changes that you're requesting.
So part one is to say instead of limiting them to 40 hours, they could use whatever they have earned. So it could be up to 120 hours.
Okay.
Really at the end. So if I was to get sick, let's say January, I've already earned my 40 hours of sick leave for that year. I would have then 3 weeks I could take off for paid sick leave. So another thing to think about is when it's in paid sick leave, you're paying the employee's current rate, and they are being able to use to stay home and take care of themselves. When it rolls into the leave plan, if they don't use it, it is being paid out at a lower rate.
But we also said we're sticklers on making sure that they are using sick leave for sick leave, correct?
Correct. The reason that they put in for sick leave, they need to document whether it's illness, hospitalization, doctor appointments.
Yeah, I think the difference there is they wouldn't be paid at all if they weren't sick.
Correct.
Versus paying them half-time, which I understand it is a savings, but it's savings for full-time, but it's not a savings because if they weren't sick, they wouldn't be paid at all. So I think that's still an increase to us in terms of cost.
How much, when an employee leaves, how much leave time, vacation time can they sell back?
They can be bought out of all vacation days,
All
All.
vacation days?
All vacation.
You just said all.
all vacation days, and then for their leave plans, all days. But the payment amount depends on how many years of service
Yeah.
they have.
Yeah. Wow.
So we are very generous in our payouts, and you will see thousands of dollars being paid
I was
out to
here
our
when I
employees when
left.
they retire or leave.
This is very nice payout. I hope everybody understands that. Most districts are cutting back on that, and they'll have a limit. Personally, I lost a lot because of those changes in my about 2 years before we left, but it had to be done because of the M&O situation we were in and things like that, so.
So the personal leave, there's a cap at 100, so only 100 can carry forward for personal leave, and they are paid out. So example, someone could have 106 days built up. They'll be paid out for 6 days of that this year, and then they'll roll 100 into next year.
I'm still a little concerned about this minimum of $226,000 minimum.
And again, that's Wendy's estimate of minimum, assuming that those folks all get paid out. And then those that are in year 4, next year would then qualify to be paid. So it's not a 1-year payout, but it is assuming that everybody currently with 5 years or more would keep all of those hours in there and be paid out.
Well, I mean, they would have to be paid out. I mean, they either use them when they're here and we pay them, or they leave and we pay them.
Right.
Right? I mean, one way or the other. It might not be
Right.
in this bucket, but either way, we're paying them, whether they stay or go. Okay, so Kim, what do you want to do from here? I mean, I think it sounds like maybe there's some consensus around the first piece, but I don't know how we go about doing the second piece.
That's what I would say, based on our conversation, and we can see if we all agree on that, is the first piece, meaning allowing employees to use more than 40 hours of sick leave if they have additional sick leave accumulated, we are in favor of. However, the moving sick leave to personal leave to be paid out, we are not in favor of. Is that, can we agree on that?
Correct. I am in favor of that.
Okay, so I'm seeing nods and yeses from all the board members. So can we revise this policy according to that? And I don't know if we have to redo a first reading or how that goes from there, but I think that would be your feedback.
We can just do a second. Yeah, we'll just do a second
Okay,
at the meeting at the end of June.
okay, perfect, at the study session, and then we can approve in July, potentially.
Actually, we'd bring it back for approval at the June 28th meeting.
Oh, okay, so we do second reading and approval at June 28th. Okay, let's go with that plan. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on that policy?
No? Thank you, Wendy.
Excellent, thank you. Next up on our agenda is 9B, which is the Learning Recovery Update Grant Scorecard presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the Governing Board, this is our monthly update in regards to our ESSER and grant scorecard. I'm going to go through some of the stuff that you've already seen. So the winter reading data, just being able to have one place for you to always go to look at some of our data on an ongoing basis. We then did also add in our spring math data so that we could see that comparison to the 2021 school year. And then another piece that we added in that we thought would be helpful is our growth coefficients in regards to all of our benchmark assessments. In looking at a growth coefficient, you're looking at, you're wanting a 0.95 or above, just so you have a context of what growth you're looking for to ensure that you're receiving at least a 1 year's growth for a student. Then we also broke it out by subgroups so that we could see and monitor that piece as well. And then by schools, that you could see the growth coefficients by each of our campuses. And then previously, I can't remember exactly when, but we had a board member who also wanted additional data or data specifically regarding TA. So we've been including that information too, so that you have that. So you can definitely see that in math is where we had the greatest gains as a district. And going through the different grant items, some things have kind of stayed the same since May. I know we just reviewed this in May, but just a couple of updates. Middle school for mental health resources, they're looking through and analyzing. They did some survey data and then pulling together all of their information to determine what additional resources may be needed in the next school year. The implementation of classroom Class-wise, the governing board approved this on April 12th. This will allow teachers the ability to monitor students while online, which will be very helpful, especially with our one-to-one deployment. Math curriculum, no change because we have already approved that. Tonight, we did an update with Annuity and looking and monitoring the need or the lower need for next year. Illuminate was purchased, and we're going through that process of syncing it with Synergy, so we have all of our student data and student information in there so that it'll be ready to roll at the very beginning of the school year. The other component with Illuminate is that we're going to utilize their benchmark assessments, so that'll be a new component for us, which means that Brian will have to look at those growth coefficients to see and analyze all of that information. So that'll be a new, kind of like as if it was a brand new test and a brand new assessment, which it is for us to then look at those growth coefficients and what is ample growth. Math manipulatives were ordered for every classroom for iReady. So those will be ready to distribute in the beginning of the school year. Still working on the special ed components and we're just finding it's kind of the same impact that we're seeing across the board in regards to services, and just like what you saw with White Tanks Learning Center, those kind of pieces. It's not like in a typical year where you have an influx of people applying for your RFP or putting in to do that. So it's trying to find vendors who are willing. So they're still doing some research in that area. The After School Club, the award was issued for Challenge Island and Best Sports. So that will also help with the goal of having more comparable after-school programs at our campuses. Professional development, we had some schools that accessed that this year, and the rest will be accessing that for the implementation throughout next school year. So that will close out in May of 2023. The care room supplies, the majority have all been ordered, and we did a deadline of fall for any that still needed to order. ELL was, we updated last time. A celebration that we wanted to point out is our after-school tutoring. We had 451 students participate in the tutoring just this year. And in our summer boost, huge shout out to Director Scudder, along with all of the folks who are working at our summer school. We have 836 students participating in that program. And they are doing an outstanding job and also problem solving, because it was a brand new grant and the grant is being built as we are flying and in the middle of it. So they're having to monitor and adjust on a daily basis of what they're reporting, what reports to fill out, all of those components. But the children and the staff have been extremely excited, and we've had great participation, and they're happy, smiling faces as they leave. And I think that is all of the updates. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. You will start to see some of these things shuffle and switch a little, because we did have, remember, we did not receive the additional grant that we had applied for, so we will be kind of shuffling some of those, as well as reallocating some of the funds if we didn't use them.
I'm excited by the numbers for the tutoring,
Yeah.
and I believe that is going to continue into next school year as well, correct?
Correct.
Whether it's the same students or different ones are identified. And the summer school program, I'm really excited that the governor's money came through and we were able to do the grant for summer school, but the numbers are phenomenal to see that many kids being able to, and having that many sites available for them to go to. So I think that is an absolute win. I think in terms of our return on investment, if you will. I'd love to see us, now that we have we had the initial baseline of how the students were identified in those categories for tutoring and summer school, and to be able to track our progress. I mean, I have all the confidence that we're going to see some really amazing things from these students and the interventions that we put in place, but I would also love to see the, kind of the return on that investment as we're now able to track them as they get, further and further along in their education career. So I think that's exciting that we now have the opportunity to do that kind of before and after look.
Yes, definitely. And they did track all of the students for tutoring, so that we'll be able to, Brian's working on that right now, of aligning their data to where we could specifically pull out their data, along with them intentionally monitoring the data of our summer school. So they're providing assessments during summer school on a pre and a post, as well as monitoring end of the year and beginning year benchmarks to see the impact that summer school had.
We'll see impact of that well into next school year, right? I mean, I know they're doing
Absolutely.
assessments sort of on a weekly basis, but looking forward to seeing where they're going to go next year as well.
And the staff is so eager, they're already talking about summer school for next year, which that's the beautiful thing about having the governor's grant this year and us being able to push the ESSER monies to next year for summer school, because then we can start the planning process a lot earlier so that we're better prepared, advertising, knowing of staffing, all of those components, so we can start that process earlier in the year, potentially like in the February timeframe of starting to put the staffing in place and really getting it set up. But exciting that they're already talking about it.
I was just going to say that's been the feedback I've heard from a lot of the staff that are teaching summer school, is that they have loved doing it. It has been such a breath of fresh air for them, and they're excited about it, and all of them say that they would be excited to do it again. So
Awesome. That's excellent. Thank you so much for the update, Superintendent Gunning. Next up on our agenda is item 10A, which is Superintendent Gunning's report.
Madam President, members of the governing board, just a few updates over this past month. One of the things that I wanted to let everyone know is that we are working with Agua Fria High School District as well as Avondale on a tri-district initiative in regards to school safety. This morning we met as an entire team with all three districts, along with all of the chiefs of police of all of our service and fire. And so we want to be able to provide as much training and support as possible and have as much consistency as possible within our three districts. Principal Tammy Garrett received the ASA Middle School Principal of the Year, so that's a celebration that happened right after we went into summer, so definitely want to celebrate her. Also, during this time, we did recruitment for Palm Valley Principal as well as L. Thomas Heck Principal, and we were successful in those initiatives. Celebrating all of our promotion ceremonies. It was a lot of fun, and thank you all who were able to attend those. It was wonderful to end the year in a typical fashion. And then my last thing, of course, was celebrating summer school and tutoring.
Thank you, Superintendent Gunning. Next on our agenda are the reports from the governing board members. Board Member Clymer?
I'm happy to start. I'll try and keep it short. We're doing very well in our meeting tonight. I'm extremely impressed by all of you guys. That long agenda, and we've only been here 2 hours. That's amazing.
I'm not done yet.
Okay, well, Dennis hasn't given his report yet, but I'm usually the long-winded one, so I'm going to make this short. I want to start by saying congratulations to our Pride Award winners and our retirees. I was unable to make both of those due to illness, and I would just regret that terribly. It's one of my favorite things to go to and to see. The Pride Award is something that is voted on by your peers, and how amazing to be celebrated and get an accolade from your peers. And to our recent retirees, there was probably 100 years of educational service that we were celebrating, years and years of blood, sweat, and tears dedicated to this district, and couldn't be more proud of those guys for choosing to spend their career with us. So they could do that anywhere, and they chose to spend it here. So thank you again sincerely for your hard work. I attended the school showcase at Corte Sierra Elementary. We got to see lots of great end-of-year activities, parent involvement. There were lots of parents on campus, and school activities. So thank you to principals, staff, parents, students, everyone that let us sort of peek in and see what was going on that campus. I also attended the band concert at Western Sky Middle School, and I bring this up because on this campus specifically, they had a staffing change mid-year, and I've been involved in middle school band for a couple of years now with a couple of kids just in my own personal life, and you know, middle school band concerts are interesting and can be different, very vastly different from year to year. And so my expectations, honestly, going in were, you know, we had a staffing change mid-year, and the school's kids didn't have band in the previous year because of COVID. And I just want to give a huge shout out to Mr. Legge and those at the Western Sky for bringing those kids around, and it was an amazing band concert. And thank you for coming out of retirement, just in general, having all of our families back together. The administrators did a great job welcoming everybody on campus, and it was just fun to get back together and to see all of the kids excited and all 3 grade levels together again, and have a great concert. So thank you for that. I also attended the Gubernatorial candidate forum that ASBA presented for school board members and I think school administrators as well. While not all of the candidates were there, I think the ones that were there did take it very seriously and were, you know, really interested in kind of addressing their platform and education, which I appreciated. It gave me a good opportunity to sort of see them in action. I would have liked to have more, you know, back and forth opportunity to ask them questions, but I do think it was good to sort of see them up close and in person and really get to know their views. So thank you to them for doing that, and to ASBA for sponsoring. And then we've been recently did an executive session for the superintendent evaluation for the second half of this year. And you know, as a board, I think we all take that very seriously. It's one of our main responsibilities as a board. So just thank you to my fellow board members for spending even, you know, more hours together to do one of the most important things that is on our plate. And that is it.
Thank you, Board Member Clymer. Dr. Dowling.
Yes. I too enjoyed the 8th grade promotions. I had the opportunity to go to Tom Heck Middle School, and I met Tom Heck was there, of course, and we had a good conversation for the 4 hours we were there, 3.5, and reminisced about a lot of things, told some lies and, you know, truths. But I really enjoyed that, and it was good to see those kids and the interaction with the parents and relatives and family and friends that were there. It was good. It was good to see. Also, this last week, I went to the Arizona School Boards Association meeting up in Flagstaff. The people who were there were happy that it was back in person, and they could talk, articulate, sit down at a table, drink a cold beverage of your choice, and enjoy each other's company, but more importantly, thoughts about what's going on in our schools. The consensus is people are generally, they're concerned. They're just concerned about the impact that this COVID, this isolation had on our kids. And just getting back in the classroom consensus was it's the best thing that ever happened. And getting the kids back face to face with their teachers, with their the ones that they relate to in the schools. It could be the cafeteria worker. It could be the maintenance worker. It's just those connections, getting that relevance and education, what it means to them, and also the value beyond the classroom. So that was a good time. Learned a lot. There was a gentleman there named DJ Vaness, V-A-N-A-S, Native American, but he was quite inspirational, good talk. He reminded me a lot of somebody that some of you may have heard of, Jim Collins, the Good to Great guy, and Built to Last, those things back in the 1990s, early 2000s. It was a good meeting. it was good for me to get there, interact, and hear what's going on in other school districts. I was pleased I was given the opportunity to go. And with that, I'll close.
Thank you, Dr. Dowling. Board Member Zanema?
I too will keep this short. I am also excited that we're going to get done as early as we are tonight. I attended several of the same things. I was able to attend the retiree and the Pride Award celebrations. That's always a fun time to see everybody celebrating. Their families were there. They did have a celebration last year, but it was a little bit smaller, so this year was kind of fun to have it just be a little bigger and see everybody there celebrating and being excited to be together. I always like when we see their families come out and get to see their moms or dads or grandmas, or some people had a lot of family, some had a couple, so it was really fun to see that. I also was able to attend, one point, Danielle, I think it was like over 300 years of service. I think that's what Shelley said during the retirees celebration, like over 300 years combined. So I was able to attend 2 of the school showcases. I actually was able to attend every single one this year, so I now have been to every campus. I'm very excited about that. So I went to Barbara Roby and Corte Sierra. Barbara Roby has Amanda Costa there, who I just happen to think is a phenomenal principal, and she gave us lots of useful information and was just ready to answer any questions we had. So it was a really great experience. And then Corte, because it was the last week of school, it's all the end of the year fun stuff, which I love as a parent. So it was really fun. There was a kindergarten class, and I can't remember the teacher's name, but their class did a play for us, and it was so adorable. It was Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but they had all these other little fairy tales interjected into it, and they had the cutest little hats, and it was adorable. And it was also on the Kindy 500 day, and the Kindy 500 cars are amazing. I love seeing the little kids with their cars, especially the ones that are having a car that's way too big for them, but they still truck along and people help them out, and it's really cute, and everybody was there. The big thing about that was all the families that were on the campus that day celebrating their kids. Parents are excited to be able to be a part of their kids' education again and be on the campus and supporting their teachers and supporting their students and getting to celebrate the things that they've learned and that they've done. So I'm really glad that we are back doing that stuff again. And then that same week was all our end of the year celebrations. I got to start one of the last days of school at a preschool celebration because I have a preschooler, and then got to later leave. I missed some morning 8th grade celebrations because I was at that. So then I got to go to Wigwam Creek Middle School for a couple of their 8th grade promotion ceremonies, and then ended my day that day at the DLA, their first and last and only 8th grade promotion. But it was really nice, and it was really fun to see all their families out supporting them and seeing the students. So it was very exciting to see all these kids. They were very excited to have their celebrations and have their families there. Lastly, I also attended the superintendent's evaluation meeting. I concur with Danielle. It's one of the most important jobs that we have. It's the main job that we're here for. I take this job as a board member really seriously, and I know that we all do, and it is a good time for us to be able to come together and have really good in-depth conversations when we have those meetings. So I appreciate them, even though they are long at times. But that's lastly, I was with a group of incoming kindergarten parents the other day, and the only reason I bring this up is because several of them had not registered their kindergartners for next year. So I would like to plug once again, if you have incoming kinders, to do that registration now, sooner the better, so that we are able to adequately have our staff ready for our kids when they start in August. I will end on that.
Thank you, Board Member Zeidema. For my report this month, I also attended some of the same events as my fellow board members, so I won't go into great detail with those. But I was able to attend the school showcases at Barbara Roby and Corte Sierra Elementary Schools, as well as the Western Sky Middle School showcase and band concert, which was amazing. I second that. As well as spent many hours working on the superintendent evaluation, not only during our executive sessions, but in addition to preparing that as well. But the best thing that I did this month was attend the 8th grade promotion ceremonies at Verado Heritage, where I got to meet many of the fine young people who are moving on to high school. The pride on the parents' faces and the teachers' faces was heartwarming. If you ever wonder why I put numerous hours into this volunteer position as a governing board member, my answer will always be the students. the privilege of shaking hands and offering a sincere congratulations to a promoting 8th grader and being met with eye contact, a smile, and a thank you makes it all worth it. Congratulations to all of our promoting 8th graders and best wishes to you in high school. I'm going to close with lyrics from Natasha Bedingfield's song Unwritten. I'm undefined, I'm just beginning. The pen's in my hand, ending unplanned. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is item 10C, which is reports from the administrators. These are informational reports only, but I would like to acknowledge the receipt as well as express my appreciation for all of these reports, especially the inclusion of the photos and all the details behind your year-end celebrations. And again, the excited faces of parents and of students being able to support us in person and ending this year on a very positive note.
With that, I motion to adjourn.
I will second. Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.